Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and today is what I call Mindset Monday. And this is an opportunity for you and me and my guests, and I have two guests tonight, to talk about mental health and wellness. And so we are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Roku TV via the Greater Works Network. So like, comment, share, tell your friends they need to be on here because this is going to be a good conversation. This is interactive, so we do expect you to put comments in the chat on Facebook, on YouTube, and get your questions answered. And let's have a conversation. This is a safe space, and I do expect to hear from you. So before I introduce my guests, my two wonderful guests, I want you to, in the comments, put in your city and state so that I can give you a shout out. Put in your city and state. I see you, Esther. Grant Esther is actually in Maryland, but he's my homeboy from Miami. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. Let us know where you are viewing us from. Where are you tuning in from? So, we have been having these discussions around mental health and wellness, and particularly in Black and Brown communities. We are seeking to normalize the conversation around mental health and wellness and getting your checkup from the neck up, going to see a counselor, going to see a therapist, and, just being well, just being well. So I see you, Stephanie Wilson from Tallahassee. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Hey, Latanya, my girlfriend Latanya up in Georgia. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Again, comment, like, tag, share, let the folks know what we have going on here today. All right, Orlando, Deanna Long chiming in. Yes. And Lynette in Midway. Thank you. All right. Well, while you all are logging in, I will go ahead and introduce my guests. I again have two wonderful guests tonight. They are Antonio Wyche. He was born and raised in Lake City, Florida, currently resides in Tallahassee, holds a master's degree in social work from the Florida State University. Go Noles. He is a licensed clinical social worker and has experience serving individuals and families since 2009. He is also a qualified supervisor overseeing registered clinical social work interns in the state of Florida. And he is the co-founder of Renewing Minds Counseling and Consulting Services. His co-founder is on with us tonight as well. He currently serves as the program director of a state evidence-based program providing community-based family therapeutic services. And he also is a consultant for functional family therapy, where he provides clinical support to agencies both nationally and internationally. Antonio is passionate about inspiring individuals and families to be their best selves. And then his partner in Renewing Minds Counseling Crime, but it's not a crime. They're doing great work. Rebecca King. Rebecca is a Afro-Latina born and raised in Miami, Florida, 305 homegirl. She currently resides in Miramar, and she holds a master's degree in social work from the Florida State University. Go Noles again. Rebecca is a licensed clinical social worker for the state of Florida and Georgia and has experience working with individuals, families, and groups since 2010. She is a qualified supervisor overseeing registered clinical social work interns in the state of Florida. And she, again, also is co founder of Renewing Minds Counseling and Consulting Services. She is the regional executive director overseeing evidence based programs contracted with the Department of Juvenile Justice in Florida and Georgia. She has a passion for raising mental health awareness in the community and assisting individuals with processing their own trauma. So help me welcome Antonio and Rebecca. Yay!
Good
Having
evening,
us.
everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome, folks. How y'all doing?
Good,
Pretty
good.
good. Glad to be here.
Good. Good. Glad to have you. So we're gonna start ladies first. Rebecca, tell the folks who is Rebecca King, not what you do, but who are you?
So, very similar to what you said, I am an Afro Latina. I'm in Miami. Woo, go Miami. So I was born and raised in Miami. I I'm weird. I like my privacy. I'm quiet. I like crafting. I love binge watching shows, reading. That's just me. I just enjoy being to myself and being surrounded by family, 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 family. Everything I do, my only friends, is all involving my family.
Okay, very good. Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, look, Tracy said crib. Tracy's from Miami as well.
That's right, 305.
That's right. All right, Antonio. Who is Antonio?
Well, my name is Antonio Wyche. I'm from little old Lake City, Florida, but big things happening in that town. I'm a believer first and foremost. I don't think I wouldn't be here without the Lord by my side every step of the way. I'm the grandson of Amos White and the grandson of Luvinia White. And I don't know, I just love helping people. I love my family. I feel like God has given me a gift to use and trying to use it to the best of my ability.
Love it. Love
Amen.
all of that. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, tell the folks about Renewing Minds. Like, what prompted you all to start the business?
Yeah. I'll let Rebecca go.
Um, so Antonio and I actually worked together, right? I graduated with my master's in 2013, and I immediately started working at AMI Kids. And it's a great organization in Tallahassee that we were working at together. And I quickly clicked with Antonio. We had very similar values when it came to valuing family and the importance of family. We saw the need for mental health in communities like ours, where mental health awareness was not a thing. That mental health, it was either you crazy or that was it. And so we saw the need and felt from that moment that we together could do something great. And as we continued to work with each other over the years, just quickly developed into renewing minds. That's
All
what we got.
right. Very good. Antonio, anything you wish to add?
Yeah, so it's funny because when people see Rebecca and I, they always call us a power team. And this goes back years. And so there's not, I don't think there's been any problem that we haven't been able to solve together. We always put our heads together. And this
Nice.
is something that we just wanted to give back to the community
Okay.
and just really put ourselves out there, give our talents to people and allow them to receive something that they haven't received before. And that's ultimately mental health awareness because we know that's something that isn't common, but we wanted to make it popular and make it
Okay.
known and affordable too.
Nice.
You know?
We need that. We need that because I don't know, and folks can chime in here, but a lot of the Black and Brown clinicians don't accept insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you
Seen
all are
that.
one of the ones that do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of our goals of starting this agency up and program up was to make it affordable because we already have full-time jobs. It was really a side thing that we were going to do. And so we said, hey, let's accept insurance because more than likely people want to use their insurance versus paying out of pocket. And so we currently are accepting Blue Cross and Blue Shield, United Health, Aetna.
Okay.
If I'm missing any, Rebecca, fill it in.
Humana.
Yeah, Humana, Cigna. So we just try to go with the whole gamut, and it just makes mental health more accessible. I think, especially because we are Black and brown,
Mhm.
we tend to get more inquiries in regards to that. So
Indeed, indeed. And so, are you all accepting new clients?
Yeah, we are always we always find a way. So yes, we are accepting new clients.
Okay.
Antonio and I try to work diligently with our clients to try and get as many people seen as possible. We also have some staff that we oversee who are helping us out. So for self-pay, we keep our rates really low for that reason. Um,
Mhm.
as you probably know, most rates tend to be in the hundreds. Our rates start at 75. Again, we wanted to make it affordable and
Mhm.
accessible. So yes, we are accepting
Nice,
new clients.
nice, nice. Yeah, no, that was one of the very pleasant surprises that I received in talking with you all. So that's great. I know that my buddy Nick Rains works with you all as well, and I believe he is on the live tonight. So shout out to Nick.
Oh,
shout out
Nick.
to you.
Yes, 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 yes. All right. So let's jump in. Let's jump in. We're talking about families and mental health. Families and mental health.
Yeah.
So I don't know who wants to start first, but I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I'm gonna let you all say whatever you want to say first. So
Right. Well, I do have a quote that will lead
okay,
us
all
to
right,
that.
let's hear it.
So it says, people in therapy often go to therapy to deal with the people in their lives who don't go to therapy.
Say that again.
Mm,
People in therapy often go to therapy to deal with the people in their lives who don't go to therapy.
mm.
Hmm.
Isn't that the truth?
You said
So
a
that
mouthful.
really stands out to me because a lot of what we deal with, even in individual therapy, is exactly that. Like we're working to find out, well, one, why are they in therapy, but what's influenced them to think the way they think. And
Mhm.
Rebecca and I come from a family systems background, and if we think about family systems, really what we're looking at is every human being is a part of a whole,
Mm, okay.
and where that whole starts at is usually within our immediate families.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we learn, what we know, our perspectives, all of that is influenced by how we're raised, what we come across to in our lives. And so we, as much as we try to separate from that, we can't separate from it, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of ingrained in us. And so when people come to therapy, that's the first thing I go to is like, what's influenced them? What's
Mm-hmm.
influenced their perspective? How were they raised? What were their experiences? And so that quote really stood out to me, and that's why I chose it.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
What stands out to me when I think of families is your introduction to life. You learn what to do, what to say, how to be from your family. They are your first friends, they're your first loves. They teach you life. But that doesn't mean they always teach you the best aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the challenging part is that being a part of that, you can't get rid of your family. And so family comes with the good and the bad. And I think the biggest why that quote stands out for me is when they're dealing with the bad, and even if it comes from family, they need somewhere to be able to figure out how to navigate that because all they know is this one way. It's not
Mm-hmm.
working.
Absolutely. No, that's very good point. Very good point. So, Rebecca, you put out a quote on your page, a post on your page that, and so I'm gonna give the disclaimer, right? This is about to get deep, y'all. Okay,
Mm,
because families are a source of a lot of the angst within the lives of folks. All right, I know you love your mom and your daddy, but sometimes they're not doing right by you. Okay,
mhm,
they haven't done right by you, and so it's tough. So this again, this might be triggering, so I'm giving the disclaimer now. Okay. Um, and we're not trying to be ugly or nasty or anything like that. We really are seeking to peel back those layers and heal. We seeking to deal with the issues and to heal. All right. So I'm gonna read this because it just ooh,
mm.
I'm going to read this. All right. It says cannabis isn't a gateway drug. Alcohol isn't a gateway drug. Nicotine isn't a gateway drug. Caffeine isn't a gateway drug. Trauma is the gateway. Childhood abuse is the gateway. Molestation is the gateway. Neglect is the gateway. Drug abuse, violent behavior, hypersexuality, and self harm are often symptoms, not the cause of much bigger issues. And it almost always stems from a childhood filled with trauma, absent parents, and an abusive family.
Drop the
I'm gonna
mic.
leave it right there. I'm not even gonna read the last sentence. I'm gonna leave it right there. All right, because we talk about families and mental health.
Yeah.
Families and mental health. So go ahead.
You know, when I first saw this, at first I was a little triggered at first because all you hear throughout school, throughout your whole life, don't try those drugs. That's a gateway drug. Don't do this. Don't do that. And you know, I'm not saying to each his own, obviously, but in reality, people utilize those things, drugs, alcohol, caffeine. They use those things because they're trying to deal with something deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I really read it, when I thought about it, we go back to your first introduction to life is your family.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, you know, they're your first introduction to great things, but they're also the first introduction to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so you then turn to other things, drugs, alcohol, to try and cope with that hurt because you don't know how to deal with it.
And let me just interject here, right? So not that your parents aren't you won't your feelings might be hurt by something that they say or a tone that they take with you or what have you, but we're talking about hurt that is not normal or that it's something that children should not have to be dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when that becomes the case, then that behavior becomes normalized. And the child thinks that this is just the way it is.
And then when it becomes normalized, what also happens after that? It becomes a pattern. It becomes a cycle. It becomes generational.
Right.
And I think that's the tough part to break because a lot of these things do seem normal in families, but in reality, they shouldn't be normal. We shouldn't classify them as normal. They're actually abnormal. And so as I think about like how I grew up, if I self-disclose for a second, how I grew up in a family that offered a lot of support. I grew up with older family members. So my great aunts, my grandparents, great uncles. And so when my grandparents had difficulties dealing with me, they delegated those responsibilities to my great uncles, my older cousins who were in their 30s, 40s at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got that support, but a lot of families don't have that. And so when they're going through adverse situations, they have to make sense of it on their own. So think about a little kid who's witnessing abuse in their family and no one's talking to them about that. Our brains have a powerful way of making sense of things around us. And so those kids are left to make sense of that. And so who's there to help them through those situations? And so when they make sense of it, now what do? It's hurtful. They're in pain. And then that ends up leading them to some of the things that were mentioned in that quote. So it just resonates with me of like what I witnessed and then what I see other families witness. I'm not saying that my family's perfect by no means.
Right.
But those things do hurt and those things leave lasting impacts and pain.
Absolutely. Go ahead,
I
Rebecca.
was going to add, my brain is flowing, you know, but I had to add something to that because I think oftentimes people can misconstrue the hurt and pain that you can receive from families because it doesn't have to be egregious to impact you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I want to pinpoint that because I think there's a lot of individuals like myself. I was not abused. I was loved, but I still have to heal. There's still hurts and pains that I experienced that could have, had I not been working on myself and through my healing could have taken me down the wrong path. It could have been me, and I think that's important to pinpoint, is that trauma is not only the things that we normally hear defined as trauma: abuse, the physical abuse, getting beat really bad, or, getting molested. Those things are trauma, but there are other forms of trauma too that are less egregious and still just as impactful.
Right. So again, not to minimize, I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing is just because the trauma may not be as severe, it doesn't make it any less impactful.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And trauma is any adverse experience you have, right? I mean, there have been a bunch of clinicians that have come on and talked about trauma on this conversational show, and I think any adverse experience that leaves a negative impact on any individual is trauma in my book. And what I view as trauma, another person might view differently, right? And so I think empathy has a lot to do with that, which we do want to talk about that a little later. But
yeah,
I think empathy has a lot to do with kind of seeing, like, what is this other person feeling? My parents, just hypothetically, like, I deal with youth where their parents abuse them. They abuse their parents. So it's kind of this back and forth thing. But all of that is learned behavior. But all of it is also trauma too. And so who's there to be like that buffer? No one.
The cannabis, the alcohol, the sex, the food, the gambling, the shopping,
All of it.
all those things, all those coping mechanisms, right?
And they're temporary fixes too, because you drink that bottle of alcohol. You wake up after your hangover the next day, you probably just feel worse because you still got that same problem. And now you just got a headache to match. So
Exactly.
I think that's why that kind of gives a clear indication of why Antonio and I felt therapy was something that we wanted to push for our community, because there were too many Band-Aids and not enough healing, not true healing.
Right.
And I think that those small coping mechanisms, they seem like they're effective, they seem like they work, but in reality, they don't do anything but mask it.
Indeed. Go ahead, Antonio. It look like you got something you want to say.
Yeah. No, this is good because, a lot of times we blame the addict, right? But we don't attempt to understand what they've been going through and what they've experienced in their lives. And I always say this, and I might be completely wrong, but this is how I view life, is that I was just fortunate enough to be born in the family that I was, but I could have easily been born in another person's situation. And so if I would have faced those same effects, those adverse experiences, who's to say I wouldn't have turned out like them, right? But I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation that I am now. And so that allows me to be more empathetic towards people that may be struggling with that. And it allows me to see past their addictions and look at what led to them being dependent or maladaptively coping on some substance. So it just allows us to really be more empathetic, I think, when we get to understand people's trauma and how family has impacted that. Because again, it's cycles, it's patterns that we look at that individual, but they have a whole story that they have to tell. And their life tells that story. And then their parents' life tell that story. And then their parents' life tell that story. So it's very complicated, but it doesn't have to be complicated if we take the time to really empathize.
Love it. You got me about to shout over here. So because you said what you said, I'm going to read the last sentence of that post, which says, but most people are too busy laughing at the homeless and drug addicts to realize your own children could be in their shoes in 15 years.
You just hurt some people's feelings right now.
I know, but it's okay. But I love y'all. I love y'all. I may have hurt your feelings, but listen, we trying to get you healed. Okay? We trying to get you healed. So, woo. All right. Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
I think that's good. No, that's really good because that's
We
exactly
just
right.
gotta sit in that for a minute because, like, seriously, y'all, like, this is real. This is so real. And so I was telling somebody the other day that oftentimes when I see, especially our Black men, young men, on the news for, hitting somebody over the head, whatever it is on this particular day, I often see little boys whose needs weren't met as children.
Mm.
Tattoos all over their face, whatever's going on. But I just see this little Black boy that, again, whose needs weren't met.
Yeah.
Well, a
I
lot of
think
the time,
about, yeah. Go ahead, Rebecca.
sorry, I was just going to say this one thing. A lot of the times, those little Black boys are told that put up and shut up, stop whining, don't cry, be a man.
That, yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep, yep.
Or they have to figure it out on their own
Hmm.
because maybe their father isn't involved,
Mm-hmm.
So they
right?
don't even
And
know
their
how to do it.
mom or caregivers trying to do all they can to raise him.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go to the streets, a level of coping, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also look at, like, when I'm working with youth, teenagers, and they're struggling with, like, issues with their parents, because we do family therapy. So it's the youth as well as the caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think to myself, these kids weren't born in a vacuum. Like,
Right.
they just raised themselves in a sense. Like, they were influenced around who they're around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about, like, how they're acting, our goal, Rebecca and I's goal when we're doing family therapy, is to also put the accountability and the responsibility on the parents as well. But there's a way we do that, while we're still respecting their experiences, but we're also getting them to see, like, I play a part in this. It's just not my kid acting out and stealing and breaking into cars. No,
Mm-hmm.
I play a part in this and how I influence a lot of that. And I'm able to see how I've been influenced.
Right.
The moment they see how they've been influenced, you see a big turnaround, because now they see that it's more generational versus their son or them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're able to make the most change. But these kids aren't born in a vacuum. We weren't born in a vacuum,
No,
right?
not at all.
When I was born, I probably looked up in my mama's face. So someone accepted me into this world at that specific time, whether it was a
Right.
doctor, whether it was a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that happens, like, we're socially ingrained with things, and that doesn't change just because someone decides to break into a car, commit a crime, or, like you said, Nicole, put tattoos on their face. Like, that's all been influence.
Mm-hmm.
The,
Absolutely.
the
Go
problem
ahead.
is that it's easy to see those things. So the outward behaviors, the substance use, the tattoos, whatever it is that person is doing, you can pinpoint those behaviors and say that is wrong. The problem is that the hurt they felt isn't seen. So unless somebody could take accountability and be able to say, wow, my intentions don't always match the impact that it makes. I think when we start to do that, we can acknowledge how we can impact others and how we could have affected that individual and influenced those behaviors. And I think that's why family therapy is important, because you can get accountability across the board and see how your intentions could have been pure, but the impact that it had on that individual could have been detrimental.
Right. Good point. Good point. All right. I had a question, and this question was a little bit ago.
I think I
And
saw one too about,
and
do you need to know your parents?
yeah, and E, I apologize. We were just kind of getting in, so I did want to go back. I
I
didn't want you to think
definitely
I was
wanted to come back.
ignoring you. Here you go. How important is it to know your parents in order to know oneself?
Mm,
I think that's a good question.
It is.
I think that's
Yeah,
a
I think
great
that's a
question.
great question. I wasn't raised by my mom. I was raised by my grandparents. They had custody of me when I was like 2 years old. And my mom wasn't in the best place, but I remember specifically, and I probably suppressed this until someone brought it up one time. And I found out, I was suppressing that for a long time. I had moved past it. I remember when I was younger, and she would promise me to come over. She would promise to come over, get me, take me out, come see me. And I remember waiting hours and hours and hours, and it never happened. And I remember that happening over and over and over again. And eventually, I just blocked it out, but it didn't go away. And it's not like I held it against her, but I suppressed it in a way that ultimately I started externalizing that in different ways. So when it comes to abandonment, I started to be more hyper focused on that, and so even the anger, and my grandparents, my family will always say, all three of my brothers, at some point in our life, we had an anger issue. And come to find out, my mom had the same thing. She struggled with that as well. But we weren't raised by a mother. And so a lot of that, I think, is not only generational, but it can also be within our DNA. And so I think it's highly important that we understand our families, our parents, what they've experienced, how they tend to react to things. And then we start making sense of, okay, that makes sense, like how I react to it as well. But not to just leave it there and understand it, but to also do something about it, I think is more important.
I think I want to add to that too, because I think that, for example, someone who is adopted, they may not know their biological parents. However, they're still raised within a family, and knowing what that family values, what they instilled in you, is going to be important, because then you'll know how to heal.
No, good point. I actually was going to ask you all how much you thought DNA made an impact in terms of, certain traits or characteristics being passed down. And again, also, what if you didn't know your family, your biological? Doesn't mean you can't go on, because you still have to exist in that community, that culture that you're in.
Yeah, it's funny, Nicole, that we take DNA tests and find out our ancestry, but we don't get to know our own immediate families that have influenced us the most. It is important to know kind of like what hereditary issues, medical issues that may arise, but we know a lot of those things can be influenced by environment. Well, same thing with emotions, same thing with behaviors. That's also influenced by our environment, like what we see. That influences how we start to react. And I do believe, and evidence says this, like research says it, that it does have an impact on our DNA, right? Because those genes can turn on and off. I do think the same thing happens with our kind of cognitively as well, right? When it comes to certain behaviors. Right. So it's very interesting. I agree with that.
Okay, gotcha. So let me see. I'm trying to think of where I want to take this. We kind of talked around the difficulty of separating from family when you come to the place of knowing that the behaviors that they have exhibited, throughout the years really aren't healthy behaviors, really aren't the way most people, live or engage. And so I wanted you all to kind of talk around that, because I have had conversations with friends and acquaintances that have been challenged in that way. Their family is all they know, is who they know, and not all from the standpoint of they don't know anybody else, but that's who they congregate with. Holidays, weekends, special occasions, and their family is quite toxic. In the conversations that they have, they aren't trying to really do much that's progressive or positive or what have you. And so they're challenged. They say, oh, I'm not going to deal with my family anymore, but the next holiday comes around, they're right back over there for the barbecue, and the family has pissed them off because they said something that was contrary, and maybe they're trying to uplift themselves, and so just talk about how, especially as adults, that can be an issue, having had those adverse experiences growing up.
So I can speak a little bit about that. I think I'm big on family. I said it earlier, right? And I think that it's difficult for a lot of individuals to separate because they believe I love my family. And so why do I need to separate? The love is there. They love me. But just because you love someone, just because they love you, doesn't mean they're loving you right. And I think boundaries are not necessarily for the other person, they're for us. If you're feeling attacked, irritated, every time you come around your family, you feel like these people are really working me up. At some point, you have to come to the realization that I might need to distance myself because this is what the root of it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. No, that distance piece is tough though.
Oh, I
It's
know it.
tough.
Yeah. Look, we always joke because Rebecca's more of the practical one. I'm more of the research one.
Okay.
But I think there is a lot of truth into what Rebecca said, and the perspective that we come from with the family therapy that we do. Any family systems model, as we look at, well, what is each individual trying to attain from their relationships? And one thing that comes up often is acceptance. I don't care if you're 5 or you're 60, you're still looking for some type of acceptance. That changes. It might change in a certain aspect, but we're always looking for acceptance. We're looking for a place to belong. We're looking for love. And even though we say love is subjective, I think we all know what love is. We know what love feels like, and we know what love doesn't feel like. And so, at a base level, I think everyone's looking for those feelings to have, whether they're good or bad, right? Whether it causes you pain or whether it causes you, joy. And so it's funny when people say like, I'm not gonna mess with him anymore, and then the next day or next week they're right back over there. And it just shows the connection that families have on us and the pull that families have on us. And it's not as easy to escape that as we say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that speaks more to like how important family is
Mm-hmm.
than it doesn't. So, yeah, great question.
Yeah, no, good point. You know, it is difficult to separate. Um, however, there is also something called chosen family
Mm.
that is not necessarily biological.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think so oftentimes we may be challenged as adults to make friends. And so, with that being said, we kind of resort back to the familiar, which is our familia, right? Our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it. I just want to mention that, as we are talking about this, because can be it can be a lot. It can be a lot.
I mean, the hardest part is kind of like Antonio said, is generational.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not something that just happened yesterday and we're just trying to wipe that slate clean. These are deeper rooted issues that have gone on generations and generations. Great great grandma did it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I do it this way. And
Right.
I think Ozzy said in the comments, I just saw that comment.
This one.
Where yes.
Some families are so numb and very desensitized in facing the reality of their trauma to the point they are not ready to deal with it. Some do not want therapy but want to be heard, yet it must be a turning point that they are motivated enough to face change and do change. So Ozzy is a therapist out of Virginia Beach
Go
area.
Ozzy.
Yeah.
That's a great comment.
Yeah.
That to me just
Mhm.
shows the challenge that a lot of families endure.
Mhm.
They're either desensitized, this is normal, this is how great great grandpappy did it, this is how we're doing it today, even though it's a problem, even though everybody hates it, this is how we're doing it. Or you have the other people who don't know how to change.
Mhm.
They don't know, what am I supposed to do? I know this isn't right, but I don't know another way. And I think it's hard to change. Like,
Mhm.
change is not easy. It hurts.
Mhm.
And who willingly wants to go through hurt?
Mhm.
But I think that the most important factor to remember is the end goal.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
you talked about distance, and I wanted to talk about that for a few, or maybe hint on it. But I think distance is important, and a lot of times we use distance as punishment for our families.
Mm-hmm.
But that really doesn't solve the problem, because that just tells us that our family still has so much influence over us.
Mm-hmm.
I think space should be used as a tool to help you heal, not necessarily as a punishment for your family. When we're doing it for our families, they still have pull, they still have influence, they still control us in a sense. Versus us saying, you know what, I'm going to decide to heal, I'm going to decide to find my distance and my peace. And then if I found that and they're still, I still want them involved, and I'll go that route. But I think a person has to come to that conclusion on their own without necessarily, involving the family in the decision-making process.
Okay.
That's hard. That's a hard thing to do.
I think it
It
goes
is.
into intention too. Like if I take space and I'm like, I'm taking this space because I want them to notice I'm not talking to them and I want them to come and apologize. If you're doing it with the intention of expecting a reaction, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons, because that just shows the level of control that person then has on you. Because the moment they don't respond the way that you want them to, it hurts you more. So you're further hurting yourself versus taking the space and saying, I myself need to separate. I need a moment. I need to breathe. When you do it for yourself, it's healing and rejuvenating. And when you come back around, you're not worried about how you're received, because you yourself feel whole again.
That's powerful. That's powerful, Rebecca. I like
Good
that.
point. Very good point. Okay, so y'all know I'm big on takeaways. So I've heard take space for yourself. All right. What else?
Empathize. I think empathy's a hard tool.
Mm-hmm.
But empathy is important because, well, what's the purpose of empathy anyway, right? To kind of we always say put yourselves in the other person's shoes, but we empathize to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a tool that we use in therapy. We empathize to connect with people. And so a lot of times as family, we don't do that. We tend to just distance ourselves. It took so long for my grandparents and myself to say, I love you. I knew they loved me
Mm-hmm.
and they showed it, right? But I took a risk and said, you know what, one day I'm just going to say I love them. And guess what? After that point, they started to actually say it to me.
Okay.
And so, but it was me willing to kind of change that generational, because they just weren't, they were old school. They weren't about all that,
Right.
And so,
I'm gonna show you. I'm not gonna tell you.
yeah, I'm gonna show you. I'm not gonna tell you. I put food on your table, clothes on your back. That's all that matters.
That's it.
But I think people also need to feel emotionally secure in relationships as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so empathizing with people, I guess, really connects them in ways that maybe they don't receive on a daily basis, because we're always just moving and going, and we get into conflicts, but we never resolve them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think understanding why that other person does what they do gives you a different perspective and allows you more likely to change and put your pride to the side, because I know what my family members experiencing. But it also allows you to set necessary boundaries if necessary, not only for you, which is most important, but also possibly for them.
Mm-hmm. So I want to add there, and Lynette, I see your comment. I definitely want to address that. I took a nonviolent communication class, and it's all about empathy. But sometimes you, as the person who wants to bring up an issue, need to have empathy first, right? Because you got all of these feelings about what happened. You got these thoughts about what's taking place. So you have to get to a point where, you can either give yourself empathy, or somebody can kind of hear you out so that they can give you empathy, so that you could move forward in order to give empathy to maybe the person who has wronged you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. So Lynette said, I was born under a shameful situation and my parents refused to address it. I've resolved I will not get answers from them. At first, it bothered me, but with therapy, I learned I'm here for a purpose. It took a long time to accept I wouldn't get an answer or explanation.
Yeah.
That to me is the purpose of healing for yourself and not for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Lynette, you had to get to that point where you found your own healing and it didn't depend on anyone else. You can ask till your face is blue. You might not ever get an answer, but it's not for them. It's not the answer that's necessary. It's you being able to accept the situation for what it is and then do what it takes for yourself to feel whole. And that's beautiful that you did that.
Absolutely.
Really.
Yeah, I think that was very well said. And though while she sought to get healing by addressing it with her parents, you can't make someone participate in the healing process. So it's very important that if you aren't able to get it from the source, that you definitely get it for yourself and within yourself. And with the help of therapy, which is a great plug there, Lynette. So thank you.
Nicole, we often underestimate, and we also do like anxiety. We help people with anxiety as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an equation I always tell my clients in terms of anxiety. Anxiety equals an overestimation of danger or the problem divided by an underestimation of your coping and resources. And so a lot of times we focus on the problem and don't focus on our resources and our ability to cope. And I think that's what therapy does, right? It increases our ability to cope, looks at our inherent strengths, and it allows us to really realize those strengths to make effective decisions, whether it's family or whether it's other individuals.
Wait, say that anxiety equation again.
Yeah, so anxiety equals an overestimation of danger,
Danger.
right? Danger or the problem, divided by an underestimation of coping and resources.
Underestimation. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to get people to understand, like, you have the resources, you have the coping within you. Let's bring those out. Let's increase those so you're not seeing this danger so presently, right? And I think that really helps a lot of people start to find out that I can heal, right, without the help of other people in my family or depending on other people.
Great point. Great point. So there's got to be a certain level of self-awareness in order to, kind of chart this path, right?
Oh, yeah. So I think that's probably the most important piece is the self-awareness. So starting to recognize when your mood shifts, recognizing the changes in your body, recognizing the changes in your mindset. So when you start feeling off, and not much explanation needed there, you just feel off, whether it be you're more irritable or people are just frustrating you, those are probably clear indications something is wrong. When you're feeling off in that way and you recognize it, I think that's where action needs to take place. Action should follow.
Okay. Good point.
Totally agree.
So self-awareness, and when you're feeling off kilter, something needs to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a boundary might be need to set.
Okay.
You may need to cope in some way, shape, or form. So some self-care. I'm big on self-care. Take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
Or communication.
Hmm.
That's a big one too, because I think words hurt. And I think we shy away from using our words because we feel like we have to have this perfect way of formalizing it to get our point across, or we have to, every time we open our mouth, it triggers the other person to respond negatively. I think one rule of thumb to remember with communication is if you speak on your own feelings, that's no one else can argue that. Only you feel them. Only you understand them. And I think as long as you communicate on that piece, it helps with the healing journey, because someone can't really tell you how to feel. And I think it limits them from having to defend themselves as much or responding negatively. You face less resistance that way.
Yeah. Okay. You stole that one from me, Rebecca. I was going to say communication, but we think alike, Nicole. So it's all right.
What'd you say, y'all? The power team?
Yeah, power team. But it makes sense though, right? Because I think the communication part is important. And I don't think we often know how to say things to people. So we just say whatever's on our mind. And then it always come across the right way. And so I want to add to that and just say, take time, take space to think about how you might want to say it. And not necessarily for them, but so that it gives you peace. And this has kind of been my 2022 saying.
Hold on.
And this is something that I'm living my life by, trying to live my life by, is seeing opportunities through obstacles. And so if anybody knows me, I always say that, but it really hits because every situation warrants an opportunity to get better or opportunity to improve either yourself or even a relationship. And so I think sometimes the things that we see as obstacles, yes, they look like obstacles on the surface, but they give us opportunity to take that relationship or ourselves to the next level. But it's stopping ourselves enough to see that and communicating accordingly with how we feel and not blaming other people for how we feel. Taking accountability for our own kind of actions and emotions, because that's the only thing that we can control. So many times we try to control other people. That's what gets us into trouble with our families. And at the end of the day, we can only control what we control. There's an old saying, 10% of what happens in life is we can't control, but the other 90% is how we respond to it. And I truly believe that.
Interesting. No, good stuff. Seeing opportunities through obstacles. Yes. You know, after every disaster or, pandemic, there is some opportunity, right? Whether that's economic or, spiritual, emotional. I think in some regards, there's been kind of a emotional, spiritual rebirth, after all of some of the tragedies that have taken place in these almost, 2 years? Yeah. So obstacles, seeing opportunities through obstacles, that's powerful.
Yeah. And I think we can practice this on a daily basis. So when we look at our families and we see all of these obstacles in place, maybe generational trauma obstacles, we can be the person to change that. I don't think we give ourselves enough credit sometimes. If we can see it, we can change it. And so I think it's just kind of taking that leap of faith and having faith in ourselves that we can go that route. But that's kind of my motto, like seeing opportunity. So on a daily basis, just ask yourself, whenever you're having a challenging time with individuals in your life, just ask, what opportunity do I have right now?
I love it. So now we're talking visualization here, right? Yeah. Look, does Renewing Mind do vision boards?
Hey, we're coming up with all type of opportunities right now.
I love it. Okay, Nicole Powell says, sometimes you go to talk about your feelings and they don't want to hear it. They will not listen. She says they will not own a behavior they did that made you feel a certain way. So I gotta ask this question again. This is because I took this nonviolent communication class. Can somebody make you feel?
No. I don't believe so. I think people can trigger us. I think we have triggers, but I think ultimately how we respond is a choice. So they can't make you anything.
This is deep. This is deep because this goes into some of the cognitive behavioral therapy type of stuff. It
does.
So we only feel because of how we think.
Right. Yep.
So if I'm feeling something, I have to go back to what was my original thought about this situation that made me feel that way. And that has nothing to do with that individual. And that has everything to do with how I perceived maybe how they treated me and things of that nature. And if I feel hurt, I'm going to own that hurt. Right. And I think it's also important, if people don't accept it, I don't think that's your job to make them accept it. I think at the end of the day, it's your job to heal and get out how you feel towards that other person. It's up to them to accept it or not.
All right.
That's tough though. That's a
it is tough because we often talk about somebody made me feel a certain kind of way.
Right.
But you had a thought about whatever it was they said that triggered that feeling.
Part of the reason that you feel a certain way is possibly because you had an expectation of how that circumstance or situation should go, how that person should treat you. I think if we recognize that our own expectations is what's setting us up for failure, rather than merely accepting, I'm not saying accept people treating you wrong, but we have to accept that sometimes people handle situations in that way. That's how they are. And so we then have a choice. Do I indulge in this, or do I do what's best for me?
Right.
And I think that's the challenge for a lot of people, because the anger, frustration, anxiety that we feel is all based on our expectations of a situation or expectations of how someone would treat us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Nicole, that's a
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Nicole Powell said that. So I think that's a normal kind of statement to make, of like people making us feel a certain. I remember when I was in school and I would get in trouble for talking too much, and I would tell my grandparents, they made me talk. They made me talk. They made me do it. And my grandparents would say, how did they make you do that? And that really resonated with me, because no one can really make you do anything. But I think that statement is powerful that she made, because a lot of times we do have that perspective. And it's just a change of the thought processes that we have around people making us do things that gets us out of that. But I want to say that because I think that's a normal statement she made.
Indeed. But I'm just checking it, because that was something again in that nonviolent communication class, that it's like, no, you have thoughts, you have feelings. Nobody can make you. It's, you gotta we separate those things. We tend to put them together, thoughts and feelings together, but they are two separate things. So
Absolutely.
I want to bring up Terrell's comment. He says, several years ago, I started to address issues from my childhood, and I was so focused on the actions of others. It wasn't until I started to address the feelings that came from those actions that I began to release and heal. I carry unnecessary hurt far too long, seeking apologies that I may never get because someone's actions and learned behaviors.
Yeah.
Powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Terrell.
Yeah, Terrell. I mean, that takes so much courage, especially as a Black man, to heal, because we're taught for so long, keep your feelings in, don't talk about them, handle it on your own. And so it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to kind of process those feelings and work through them.
Absolutely. All right.
Nicole, someone on the chat, Zaina Lowe.
Yes, I was just about to pull that one up. Zaina said, someone said to give another person power when they're angry, when they anger you, and you have to take accountability. For example, instead of that person made me mad, state, I allowed that person to upset me.
I had to pick this comment and highlight it, because I think this is a simple technique that a lot of us can do, even starting today, that helps us take control of our own thoughts and behaviors and actions. Because if you separate yourself, remember how you were saying they're different, thoughts and behaviors are different. So when we start separating ourselves from they made me, they did, and own, I'm having the thought, or I'm recognizing I allowed this to happen. I'm having the thought that this happened. Once we create that separation, we can actually do something about it. I think that was important to mention, for sure.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what my instructor was talking about. You're thinking this, but it's translating or causing this feeling, right? But it starts with the thought.
Yeah, no, it does. And the people that we can practice that on the most is our family.
Listen. Oh my gosh. Yes, our family. I think sometimes we might feel like it's impossible, though, because our family is our family and they're set in their ways and so on and so forth. So, but I think, Antonio, as you stated, seeing those opportunities through the obstacles, visualizing it and starting to work on it. All right, Jamil said, people don't pause to ask, why am I feeling this way? Did he make me? Did she make me? I believe people find it easier to blame others than to uncover their truth.
Amen to that.
All right, Andre. If a person can control your feelings, then that means they can control you. I refuse to allow others to control my mental and emotional well-being.
You better speak, Andre.
All right,
Right.
Andre.
All right. All right.
All right. Lynette said, "What can we do as a community about suicide, specifically with Black men?"
Mm.
Whew, that's a whole nother live, Lynette. I don't know. Do y'all want to try to tackle some of that? I actually have somebody coming on February 2nd to talk about that, Lynette.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
if you
That's
want to
good.
just hold tight, we can. And now I want to shut it totally down. But Antonio and Rebecca, if you all in the chat, once we, you know, stop broadcasting, want to try to address that, you can.
Yeah. Well, I would say just think about it from a systems perspective too. Family influences a lot of those behaviors and how people can heal and influence to heal. So it all starts with the family too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ozzy said a thought does not require action on it if it is thought out completely and then acted upon. Accountability must be present.
Hmm.
All right, Ozzy. Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
for sure. Someone once told me, just because you think it doesn't mean it's true.
Mm.
And I had to really like start using that as my mantra because I have a very anxious brain. My brain is on hyperdrive 24/7, and I think everything under the sun, the worst case scenario of any situation I thought of.
Oh.
And I think that I had to learn to separate myself from my thoughts in order to reduce a lot of the negative output that I was putting out. I was very
Mm.
frustrated, angry, lashing out. I'm sorry, family and friends. I have lashed out on you in the past. My apologies. Um, but I think that it all stemmed from my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thoughts are powerful. They
Yes.
are.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to bring them under subjection. And that's where that self awareness piece comes too, because we can project our thoughts on others and they ain't even thinking about us.
Hmm.
Very true. Very true.
So
Yeah.
we done created a whole movie.
Yeah. To put that in
Mhm.
perspective really quick, Nicole. So I think I forgot what study came out, but there's a study that talked about how on a daily basis we have about 70,000 thoughts. I know that sounds like a lot. 90% of those thoughts are negative.
Mm.
90% of the thoughts that we have on a daily basis are pessimistic and negative. So think about the opportunities that we might have if we change the way we think, especially in regards to the people that are close to us.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Jamil, I know you listening. We need some positive affirmation right now. He said 90% of the 70,000 thoughts that we have a day are negative.
Yeah.
Mm.
That is mind blowing. Whew. Yes, we need some positive affirmations right now. Oh, well, this has been delightful. I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to the power team of Antonio and Rebecca, renewing minds.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, this has been good. I really appreciate y'all. If you all have found this to be beneficial, give me some hearts, the viewers, some hearts, some thumbs up, some I don't know, church finger something.
Nicole,
Okay.
Nicole, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I
Yeah,
wanted
here we go. She said, Nicole's got another question. What about gaslighting and manipulation? How do you stay positive on that?
Mm.
so positivity doesn't always have to be. We don't always have to look at things as roses and rainbows. I always substitute and relabel positivity as we need to think realistically,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because life continues to move forward. Life doesn't treat us fairly sometimes. And so when people are manipulative and gaslighting you, thinking realistically is saying, should I be putting up this right now? Or
Hmm.
should I be moving forward onto something better? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that takes self-reflection. So no, you don't have to put up with that at all. I don't think that those are things, at least in terms of self-respect, if you have self-respect for yourself, that we should be dealing with. But it takes self-reflection to know when to get out, because a lot of people do stay in situations, whether it's family or relationships like that.
I think if you can recognize that you're being manipulated or gaslighted, it's probably time to set a boundary. That's That's a very clear indication. You're self-aware, you feel it, you know it's happening. Communicate it or set a boundary. At that point, you have to choose you. Can't change them from doing the behaviors.
All right. Good point. And Andre just gave us a scripture. He said, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he.
Amen.
Amen. All
Thanks
right.
for joining, Drake. That's my best friend. Thanks for joining.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Dre. All right. So Nicole said it's time to go. So I think she got it. I think she got it. Cool. Well, how can folks connect with you all?
So we are on Facebook and Instagram, Renewing Minds. You can
Okay.
also connect with us through our website, renewingmindsccs.com.
All right.
We have a little inventory question list there. So if you need to privately send us anything, it is confidential. It comes directly to our confidential inbox. So you can definitely check it out there.
Or renewingminds.com?
Renewingmindsccs.com.
CCS.
Yes.
Should have known that. I should know that. Right. All right. I'm going to put that up. There we go. So renewingmindsccs.com. All right. So Lynette wants to know, do you have virtual sessions?
Yes, Lynette, we do. We are all virtual. So wherever you are, we will be there.
Wonderful. 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 All right. Good deal. Yeah, you do accept insurance.
We do
But
accept
again,
insurance. We have a black male therapist, actually a couple on
okay.
staff. We have
So,
2 black female therapists on staff as well. So we're ready. We're locked and loaded, ready to go.
nice, 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 nice. All right. People will feel what you are thinking, whether it's shared or not. That is why our words must match our actions, and balance is necessity even in our aloneness. Yes. Yes.
Honestly, we definitely need to connect. Yeah.
Most
Yes.
definitely.
Absolutely. Ozzy will be on next Monday.
Okay. Awesome.
So, yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate you. I appreciate the power team. I appreciate the viewers. I do have a little scrolling message at the bottom. If you like what you see, like, comment, share, subscribe to the Conversations with Nicole YouTube channel, as well as Renewing Minds. You all are on Facebook. You all are on Instagram. So check them out. They have some great tips that they put out. I've been sharing some of them, and yeah, y'all have to come back for sure.
Oh yeah. This conversation can go on for days.
It could, but we only got an hour, so
Yeah, we only got an hour. Well, thank you, Nicole, for the opportunity. We definitely appreciate it.
my pleasure, my pleasure. Okay, what caption you talking about, Lynette? Text me because I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. What happened to the captions? All right. Ozzy said, beautiful people keep strong and keep doing good by helping people renew their minds.
Thank you, Ozzy.
Thank you, Ozzy.
Love it, love it, love it. And then, so I will do a post with these takeaways, which were the take space for yourself, empathy, self awareness, boundaries, coping, self care, communication, all of those things that were shared tonight. All right.
Thank you.
All right, good people. We will see y'all Wednesday. Wednesday, we have a show on healing the mother womb. I have 2 guests. Again, this is the week of doubles on Conversations with Nicole. So, healing the mother womb. So, it should be a quite insightful conversation. All right. Y'all have a good evening, and we'll see y'all next time.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.